Hello everyone. Okay, today we are going to be talking about if I was just starting out in oils, what palette would I pick? Now, if you search this on the internet, you are going to come across so many different combinations of colors, and ultimately all of them are correct. Whether it's limited palette, loads of colors, what is it, CYM, cyan, yellow, magenta versus RYB, whatever it is. There's different color palettes where you can pick cyan, yellow, magenta, or red, yellow, blue, and every combination in between. So before we dive in, this is just my opinion and my own personal experience from buying loads of different colors and trying different palettes and doing this for enough years that I kind of see which colors I use the most and which ones ultimately get me to the end result the majority of the time. It comes down to what feels right to you, but this is the palette that I would pick. It can be quite nuanced because you're gonna have a different palette if you're painting seascapes versus cityscapes versus equestrian paintings. It's all gonna be slightly different based on, what you need the most. But I think these colors will get you very far, and I'll make some recommendations just for specifics. So to start us off, I think the majority of what we come across in our daily lives and would therefore paint tends to be pretty natural. And for that reason, I think these are the four base, best colors. We have titanium white, burnt umber, burnt sienna, and yellow ochre. Relatively neutral. This has a little bit more warmth, but relatively neutral, but very earth tone base. And for most of the things we come across, you can get so much done with these, as well as with the addition of ultramarine blue. So I'm not saying this is the base palette. We're not done yet, but these are very important that I think have a place in every palette and almost every subject matter. From there, one of the things that I frequently come across, and this is a personal taste, but something that I feel like resonates with a lot of people in a lot of different color palettes, is that I'm not super fond of mixing green. Can I mix green? Yes, but I would rather start with a base color that's green and then just be able to tweak it how I want it. It's just easier. To me, it ends up using less paint. For that, my favorite green to use is chromium green oxide. I feel like with this green, I can mix almost everything that I need, and then you have other colors that you can kind of tweak. The other one that I'm going to add in, so what I'll do is I'll have the main colors that I think every palette can use here. And with any side note, I'll move it slightly up. So I'm gonna put Viridian Green right here because not everyone needs it. I'm an equestrian painter, so we do a lot of things with hunter green and this deep kind of rich color greens. For me, Viridian really helps me achieve that color. The other way that I found it useful is in forests. It's really good at getting you that deep, almost bluey, moody green that you can sometimes find in forests or edited photos of forests. I really like that color. So to me, Viridian Green helps me get there, but if you're not doing equestrian stuff, you're not painting forests, I think you can get close by mixing, but again, it just saves me time by having that hue ready to go. So not necessary, but potentially useful for the right artist. From there, let's talk about reds. Reds can be a little bit tricky because they are a bit specific. Again, if you're doing seascapes, do you really need red? No, probably not. Is it good to have? Yes, because it is a primary color, so it can help you kind of navigate and achieve other colors that you might need, such as purples. or sunsets, that sort of stuff. So to some extent, it probably is important to have in all palettes. With that, I have a bit of a caveat to it. So these are the two reds that I have always. It's a cadmium red and alizarin crimson. Now, I use alizarin crimson way more. I love it. However, I didn't have it for 2 to 3 years. I did not have this on my palette. So I made do without it. The reason I say this is though I love this, and it works very well for equestrian paintings and certain desert scapes, and kind of, it gives you more of like a rich purpley, cooler red. It's great. It has a lot of depth to it. However, for your basic starter palette, I would go with a cadmium red. The reason for that is that I think you can get by mixing, you can get close to this. You will never be able to mix a cadmium red. It doesn't exist. Cadmium red is just very much its own color, and the level of saturation really is what you would be missing out on if you tried to mix a color like this. It's just not going to happen. So I would pick a cadmium red because you then have a lot of diversity. Do I use this very often? No. Honestly, very rarely. But it is versatile. It can help with skin tones. And then you have the really punchy pure red if you need it. And then you can also mix in a bunch of things, again, for skin tones, sunsets, red fabric, whatever it is you come across, you should be able to get there with a red cadmium. This is a red cadmium light. I would go for either a light or a medium. I haven't really experimented much between light or medium. I went with light because I happen to like the hue a little bit more. So let's add cadmium red in there. I'll put alizarin crimson up here as a specialty. From there, you're also going to need a yellow. Again, this can be a little bit specific. I've dealt with a few colors and have definitely come across my own favorites. Again, there's two. However, there's a caveat to this one. So again, for a beginner's palette, I would pick the most versatile yellow that you can get. For me, it's another cadmium. Cadmium yellow. This one is a medium. You can also have a light and a dark. To me, the medium seemed like the most versatile hue. It can help you get really punchy greens. It can help you with sunsets. It's a strong color. It carries a lot of pigment. Ultimately, you can mix it with a lot of things and get there pretty well. Now, I know some people pick cadmium lemon. I personally use that maybe 1% of the time. I don't really like that hue. It's a very cool yellow, and most of the times I come across yellows, I want it to be kind of a warm color, so this really helps me with that. And to me, there's something about when I mix with cadmium lemon, it just, I don't know, it doesn't always go the way I want. So for me, I would recommend the cadmium yellow light, not a lemon. Down the line, if you're working with yellows enough and you feel like, oh, I really want this punchy but cool yellow, that's probably the direction you'd want to go. But again, I think you can achieve most with this. Now, for me specifically, I also don't really use yellow all that much, kind of, at least this yellow. I have come across Naples yellow. For some reason, there's quite a lot of controversy about this color. I don't know if it's because it's really old and maybe the way that it used to be made was something like controversial or expensive, or I don't know what, but I have a Naples yellow and I love it. Every single day, every single horse painting I do, basically every painting I do, I find a use for this. I literally have 5 extra paint tubes on hand all the time because I use it that much. Now, is it for everyone? No. I have found that this works for me really well with mixing, and mixing the equestrian tones that I need. I don't think this is for a beginner. I don't think it's necessary. I think you should experiment more with this and see the way that you use yellows more and more of the hues and tones that you want out of your yellows. Figure that out with this first, and then figure out the alternative yellow that you might want. Because you have Indian yellows, you have There's so many. I'm not gonna go through and list them all, but there are different hues, there are different mixes of yellows, and I think what you learn by using this one first, you'll be able to better pick a yellow that matches you from there down the line. Like eventually go buy the specific one that you want, which for me was Naples yellow. So let's add cadmium yellow to the necessary. We'll add Naples yellow for specific. Okay, so from there we have a few more colors to cover, and it starts to get a little bit tricky. So let's tackle orange first. Personally, I basically never use orange. And when I do, the orange that I need is mixable with all the colors that I've talked about so far. I do have a cadmium orange on standby. Again, the cadmiums are very punchy, highly pigmented colors. So if you really, really need just a strong, bold orange, a cadmium orange is gonna be the way that you wanna go. Cadmium orange. However, again, I rarely ever use this. I'm trying to think through subject matters in my mind that other people would paint. And really, I think you can mix colors that are close enough, at least for the first while, because we're talking about starting off beginner specific. And I just don't think you need this yet. Basically never use it, and I think you can just mix it. So I'm not gonna put an orange on the palette. If you do need an orange, this is what I would pick, but cadmiums are expensive. So save your money and wait and see if you need it first. Okay, another color that we should probably tackle is purple. Purple is another one that is very easy to mix, but it also can be a bit tricky to mix because you need the right combination of red and blue in order to get the exact hue that you want. So whether it's a cool purple or a warm purple, that's gonna kind of depend on the blue and the red that you have. Now, does that mean that, like, do you need to go get a purple? Personally, where I'm getting at with this, I don't think you need a purple. Again, I went almost 2 years without having a purple on hand, and it was fine. I managed to find a way to mix those colors. In fact, it probably makes you better at color mixing when you have to mix certain colors. Do I have a purple now? Yes, because I also want to save time, and I know my tendency towards a warm or cool purple and how I use that. So I was able to pick a purple that very specifically met my needs. But I don't think when you're starting out, I don't think you need to spend the money on it. Wait just down the line, just see what you can get by with, and then if you find that whatever subject matter you're trying to paint or paint the most often, if you find that you need it, go buy that, you know? Also, side note, on my Patreon, I put not only self-taught artist stuff, but I try to put info out there on maybe more specific art things. Where am I getting with this? I created an entire PDF that goes through all of the main colors that I have and use and that other people use. And I have listed the value of it and whether it's warm or cool. So it's just a really great PDF you can look at and reference. So if you are going to look to add in more colors to your color palette, you can see the value of the purple and whether it's cool or warm, and just help you, hopefully help answer some questions and guide you, because you can have so many purples in front of you that you don't know which one to actually pick. I created that list for myself, shared it with you guys so that hopefully you can get the same out of it. That can be found on my Patreon. But I digress. Back to purple. I don't think you need it on a beginner's palette. Just wait and see if you need it. With that, of course, because there's a caveat to everything, but I've also been doing this long enough that I've kind of drifted into my own style and preferences. One of my favorite colors is the Blick Studio Specific Violet Gray. The other alternative to this is King's Blue, that I believe is Old Holland. I believe that's an Old Holland color. That one's really popular. It might be Michael Harding. I'd have to double check, but it's King's Blue in either of those brands, maybe even both. That's the other equivalent. The only difference is one is more of a violet purpley color, one is a blue color. They serve the same purpose, and I know there are so many artists that I look up to that use the King's Blue that honestly I've been debating buying it so that I can compare it and see which one I like more. But ultimately, the way that I use this, I like having the purple hue, I think, more than blue. I haven't tried the blue, but I love the purple and it gets exactly what I want. So therefore, it works for me. Would I recommend this for beginners? No, I don't think you need it right off the bat. The reason I'm telling you about it is I think down the line, the purpose of adding a violet gray or a King's Blue is it just grays out a lot of your colors. So it can add this like beautiful, natural kind of gray tone to whatever you're mixing and just bring down the saturation. And to me, it just really helps getting those soft, nuanced colors, whether it's a halftone, whether it's in the shadow. It adds color, but also brings down the saturation perfectly. And that's exactly how the artists I look up to, that's how they use King's Blue as well. So it is a great color. Do you need it right off the bat? No, you can basically mix this and you can achieve the same effect with the colors that I've already told you about. So I don't think it's necessary. I'm gonna put it as one of the non-essential colors just because I use it every single day, and every single palette I put out, I do have this gray, but you don't need it right off the bat. We already have a blue in there, in the ultramarine blue, but remember when I was first talking about the red, yellow, blue primary versus cyan, yellow, magenta? The reason that that exists is that each combination essentially can create slightly, they just have different capabilities in how you mix and the colors that you are able to mix with them. I don't know that I really abide, I kind of abide to both. I pick and choose aspects of both that I like, and at this point, I have enough variety in my paint tubes that I kind of work with both simultaneously to get the colors I want. Nevertheless, the reason I brought that up is because I'm gonna talk about the cyan and kind of cobalt teal color. If you want a reference for a very influential artist who uses this, Andrew Tischler, he is actually the one that got me on to this color and adding that into my palette. So cobalt teal can be really important. You guessed it. I have another caveat to that. I will say I almost never use this. This paint tube is almost 3 years old, and that's how much I've used of it. So I ultimately haven't found much of a use for it. Now, does that mean that it's not important? No, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing out on a lot of opportunities to mix it. It also could be a way that a lot of people mix greens, but again, I pick a green because I don't want to deal with mixing greens. I want to start with the base. For that reason, I'm not going to add this into the essential palette. I'm going to leave it as one of the accessory colors because if I was starting out, I would not tell you to go buy this, on top of the fact that it's pretty expensive. And for how little I use it and risk that paint tube drying out, which I frequently am afraid of because that's a lot of money to dry up, I'm not going to recommend it to you. I'm not going to put it in the essential palette because I just don't use it. So let's put that as a non-essential. But cobalt teal does bring us into a bit more of the specifics of it really depends on what you're painting. I'm painting horses 99% of the time. I do venture out to practice and I will do portraits, I will do landscapes, just whatever I feel like practicing. I think that if you're painting seascapes, you need cobalt teal. The other color that you will probably need is a phthalo blue, which phthalo. Oh no, maybe it's PTH, yeah. PTHALO? Yeah, that sounds right. I don't have it in front of me, but any of those phthalo colors have that very bottle greeny effect of water. So whether it's phthalo blue, phthalo green, it kind of speaks for itself. One is going to be more green toned, one is going to be more blue toned. But I think a phthalo blue and cobalt teal are great for seascapes. If you're painting a lot of water, that's probably going to be an essential part of your palette. Now, if you're doing landscapes without a lot of color or without that kind of bottle green color, you probably don't need it. You could probably get away with just cobalt teal. Again, I'm painting horses 99% of the time. You don't see blue horses very often, do you? At least not cobalt teal horses, but it does occasionally show up in saddle pads of a Western horse or racing silks on a racehorse. So it's not that I don't ever come across it, it's just 99% of the time I don't. It's a very specific color. So I'm gonna leave that one up to you because you know what you're going to be painting, and I would look at, maybe before you start, just kind of look into some of the things that you're most interested in painting and just analyze the colors that make up that subject matter and go from there. Because I am not all-knowing and I don't know everything that is paintable in the world. So ultimately, I don't know what you're interested in painting, and I'm sure there's some things that I'm missing that cobalt teal would be very helpful in achieving those colors, but to me, it's just not essential, not absolutely essential. It's just one of those colors that you need 1% of the time, but when you do need it, you really need that color, which is really hard to mix. That's another reason. Cobalt teal is incredibly hard to mix that color. So could it kind of be an essential? Yes, I can see why a lot of people would put that into an essential palette. But if you do buy it, buy a small tube. Just try it out. Don't spend tons of money on a big tube, just small ones. It'll get by just fine. Which leads me into my last piece of advice when it comes to creating your beginner starter oil painting palette. And that is to always buy small paint tubes. And I have a great example of why. Small paint tubes, yes, they can be more expensive in the long run. You'll be paying a little bit more money, but you also are risking way less because, so this is my burnt umber, and as you can see, I have tape. It's leaking, essentially. So I am worried all the time that this paint tube is going to dry up, and that is a lot of paint to dry up on me. Now, I have a big tube of this because after doing this full time for 2 or 3 years, this is my 3rd year, I know this is probably my most used color, hands down across the board. So I go through a lot of it. I opened this earlier this year and already I'm basically 3/4 of the way through it. But this is a perfect example of what can happen. So if you're not going through it that quickly, or you're not sure if you're gonna go through it that quickly, do not buy a big tube of paint because you risk it drying out and losing all of that paint versus just buying a smaller one, probably spending a little bit more money per ounce, but you're gonna go through it at a faster rate and you're not gonna risk it drying out as quickly. If it does, it's way less paint than what's in here. So as a beginner, I always recommend buy small tubes. In fact, for most colors, that's what I still do, other than my key colors that I just devour throughout the year. And that's burnt umber, burnt sienna, titanium white. I go through a lot of those colors. So I don't risk it, but if you're not like me and painting 50 paintings in half a year, buy small tubes. There's no sense in buying big ones and risking it. With that is all I have for you. I hope this gets you set up and answers some questions and gives you not only a good reference for a beginner palette, but just maybe some extra spice that you can add into later or think about as you're mixing colors. You can think about ones that you want to add in at a later date. And I wish you the best of luck on your painting journey. And as always, thank you so much for joining, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.